a Swedish pop group in silver platform boots and the most feared military commander of the 19th century have in common?
It does sound a bit like the setup to a joke.
Right, it sounds very strange.
Yeah.
But today, we're going to find the answer.
Usually when we talk about military history, sequins and Europop don't really enter the equation.
Exactly. But today is different. Welcome to this deep dive for the Speakeasy English channel. Today, we are looking at the pivotal 1815 Battle of Waterloo. But we are going to use ABA's 1974 hit song Waterloo as our map.
It's a brilliant way to frame it, actually. You have this incredibly upbeat pop track that uses a catastrophic military defeat as a metaphor for falling in love.
Perfect.
So our mission today is to unpack the history of the song itself, how it conquered Eurovision, and then use the lyrics to, fact-check the actual history of Napoleon's final stand.
I am so ready for this. I honestly can't get the tune out of my head now. So let's start with the song, right? Before we get to the canons, we have to talk about Brighton, England, 1974.
Right. April 6, 1974, the Eurovision Song Contest. This was ABA's breakout moment.
And they absolutely crushed it. Well, actually, looking at the notes, they won with 24 points.
Yeah.
Which, if you watch modern Eurovision, sounds tiny.
It does sound low, but the scoring system was completely different then. The runner-up only had 18 points, so it was a solid victory.
Ah, okay.
But what's fascinating is that this wasn't their first attempt. They'd tried to enter the Swedish pre-selection the year before, in 1973, with a song called Ring Ring.
And they finished third. Can you imagine a world where ABA just gave up after Ring Ring?
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
But they came back with Waterloo. And here's a fun nugget I found. The song's working title wasn't Waterloo, it was Honey Pie.
Honey Pie. It doesn't quite have the same dramatic weight, does it?
Yeah.
At Honey Pie, Napoleon did surrender.
Definitely not. It loses all the gravitas.
Yeah.
But the sound was different too, wasn't it? It wasn't just your typical 70s Eurovision song.
No, and that's key to why it worked. The sources mention they were heavily inspired by the UK glam rock scene at the time.
So for our listeners who might not know, what exactly is glam rock?
Think of bands like Wizard, their song See My Baby Jive. It's that huge wall of sound production style.
Right.
Lots of instruments, saxophones, very loud and full. It's rock and roll, but dressed up in these theatrical androgynous costumes. ABBA adopted that.
Hence the star-shaped guitars and the silver boots.
Exactly. They were consciously trying to fit that British glam aesthetic. And it worked. I mean, it hit #1 in the UK, sold nearly 6 million copies, and even charted in the US.
Which is almost unheard of for a Eurovision act.
Almost never happens.
So the core of this global hit is the metaphor. The woman surrendering to a romance she can't escape.
And she says the history book on the shelf is always repeating itself.
Precisely. So let's take that history book off the shelf. Let's go from the disco floor to the muddy fields of Belgium in June 1815.
It's quite a shift in tone.
To set the scene for us.
Yeah.
Why was this battle even happening? I thought Napoleon was already finished.
He was supposed to be. He'd been exiled to the island of Elba. But he escaped. This is the period historians call the 100 Days.
So he just comes back and takes over again.
He does. And the nations of Europe, the Seventh Coalition, they immediately declare war. But it's a very specific kind of war.
Oh. How so?
They didn't declare war on France. They declared war on Napoleon, personally. They labeled him an outlaw. It was literally everyone against this one man.
So Napoleon knows the whole world is coming for him. What's his plan?
He knows he can't win if they all group together. His only chance is speed. He has to strike before their armies can link up.
And in Belgium, he's facing two of them.
Two main armies, yes. The Anglo-Allied army, led by the Duke of Wellington, and the Prussian army, led by Field Marshal Blücher.
And his strategy was to keep them apart.
Exactly. Divide and conquer. If they linked up, he was outnumbered nearly 2-1. He actually beat the Prussians just 2 days before Waterloo at the Battle of Ligny. He thought he'd driven them off. But, and this is the crucial point, the Prussians didn't retreat east towards home. They retreated north.
Why does that direction matter so much?
Geographically, it's everything. If they went east, they were out of the fight. By going north, they stayed parallel to Wellington. They stayed within marching distance. That decision, it literally saved the campaign.
So on June 18th, Wellington sets up his defense. He picks a ridge at Mont Saint-Jean. This was a classic Wellington move, wasn't it?
It was his signature tactic. He loved to hide his troops on the reverse slope.
Can you explain that? What is a reverse slope?
Well, imagine a hill. The enemy's on one side, you're on the other, instead of standing right on the crest where they can see you.
You stand just down the other side.
Exactly. So Napoleon's cannons can't see your men. The cannonballs just fly harmlessly over their heads. It protected his infantry until the very last second.
Speaking of the ground, the weather played a huge part, too.
A massive part. It had rained torrentially the night before. The ground was just a sodden mess. This is why Napoleon delayed the start of the battle until almost noon.
Why wait? Was he sleeping in?
He was waiting for the ground to dry out a bit. In that era, cannonballs were designed to skip along the ground like a bowling ball. In deep mud, they just splat and stop.
It makes him less effective.
Massively. Plus, moving thousands of horses through that kind of mud is just exhausting. But that delay, it was fatal.
Because every hour he waited.
Was an hour closer to the Prussians arriving.
Okay, the stage is set. We have mud, hidden troops, and the clock is ticking. Let's bring ABBA back in. I want to fact-check these lyrics.
Let's do it.
The big line. At Waterloo, Napoleon did surrender. True or false?
That's false. Historically speaking, it's incorrect.
ABBA lied to us.
Well, for the sake of a good rhyme, maybe. The reality was more chaotic. When the battle was lost, Napoleon fled. He went back to Paris. He didn't abdicate until June 22nd, 4 days later.
And he didn't even surrender to Wellington, did he?
No. He surrendered on July 15th to Captain Maitland of a British warship, the HMS Bellerophon. He gave himself up to the Royal Navy.
Hoping for a nice retirement in the English countryside.
Which they did not give him. They sent him to St. Helena, a rock in the middle of the Atlantic. They weren't taking any more chances.
Okay, so ABBA gets a strike on the surrender line. Well, what about the next one? Couldn't escape if I wanted to.
Now, this one is accidentally brilliant. Strategically, this is spot on.
Because he was crabbed.
Completely. Think of the map. He's facing Wellington to his north. He's trying to break that line. But then in the afternoon, the Prussians start arriving on his right flank from the east.
The pincer movement.
In effect, yes. Napoleon was forced to fight two battles at once. He had to divert his precious reserves to fight the Prussians in a village called Plancenoit. He was squeezed. He couldn't escape the arithmetic of war. He just ran out of men.
So couldn't escape it if I wanted to is a solid pass for historical accuracy.
Absolutely. He was checkmated.
Now let's get into some of the specific nuggets of the battle. The first one that stands out is Hougoumont.
Hougoumont is incredible. A large farmhouse complex on Wellington's right. Napoleon meant it as a diversion to draw in Wellington's reserves.
But the opposite happened.
Exactly. Wellington put some of his best troops inside and told them to hold it at all costs. It became a battle within the battle, sucking in thousands of French soldiers.
And there's that moment with the axe. This felt like it was straight out of a movie script.
The North Gate. It's one of the most famous moments. A huge French officer, Sous-Lieutenant Legros, the smasher, he actually breaks through the gate with an axe. A few French soldiers pour into the courtyard.
Total crisis moment.
It was. If the farm fell, the whole line might crumble. But a group of British guardsmen, led by Lieutenant Colonel Mittenel, physically forced the heavy doors shut again.
They just slammed the door.
Literally, they barred the gate, trapping the few who'd made it inside. Wellington later said the success of the whole battle turned on the closing of those gates.
Wow. Okay, moving from the farmhouse to the cavalry. I read about the Scots Greys.
The British heavy cavalry. A classic case of glory versus discipline. They launched this amazing charge, smashed into the French infantry.
They captured the Eagle Standard, right?
He did, a massive trophy. But then they didn't stop. They got what you'd call cavalry fever.
What's cavalry fever?
It's a military term for just losing your head in the excitement. They galloped right across the valley into the French guns on exhausted horses, and then the French lancers counterattacked.
And they were cut to pieces.
A disaster. But the French cavalry made huge mistakes, too. Their commander, Marshal Ney, thought he saw the British retreating, so he sent 9,000 horsemen charging up the hill.
But with no infantry.
No infantry support, and this is where we get the famous infantry squares.
I've seen paintings of this, the soldiers in a box formation. How does that actually work against thousands of horses?
It's a bit like rock, paper, scissors. A horse has a self-preservation instinct. It will not run full speed into a solid wall of bayonets.
So the horses just stop.
They swerve around it. The French cavalry could ride around the squares, but they couldn't break them, all while the British infantry are shooting them down.
The discipline to stand there must have been unimaginable.
If one man runs, the square breaks and everyone dies.
So we have the farmhouse, the cavalry chaos, and then the climax.
Yeah.
The end of the song, you might say. the Imperial Guard.
The elite of the elite. These were the veterans, the legends. They had never been defeated in battle. At 7 p.m., with the Prussians breaking through his flank, Napoleon plays his last card.
This is the moment. If they break the line, he wins.
Yes, they march up that ridge, and just as they reach the top, Wellington shouts to his own guards, who were lying down in the tall corn to hide from the cannons, "Up, guards, and at them!"
They just stood up and fired point blank.
A massive volley. The shock was too much. The Imperial Guard, they wavered, and then, for the first time in their history, they broke. A cry went through the French army, "La garde recule!" The guard is retreating.
And that was it. The psychological blow was too big.
Total panic. The army just disintegrated. That was the Waterloo moment.
It really puts the lyrics in a new light. I feel like I win when I lose. Because in the battle, even the winners felt like they lost.
That's a very poignant connection. The casualty numbers were horrific. Around 40,000 French, 22,000 Allied. Wellington himself said, "Nothing except a battle lost can be half so melancholy as a battle won."
That's heavy.
It was a slaughterhouse. There's a grim detail in the sources about Waterloo teeth.
Oh, I saw that. It's
Yeah.
disturbing.
It is. Scavengers pulled teeth from the dead soldiers to make dentures back in Britain. Waterloo ivory, they called it.
Wow. But amidst all that horror, there's that one famous anecdote that is just so British. Lord Uxbridge's leg.
It is the ultimate stiff upper lip moment. Lord Uxbridge was Wellington's cavalry commander. Right at the end, a cannonball smashes his leg.
And he doesn't scream or panic?
No. He turns to Wellington and says, "By God, sir, I've lost my leg."
And Wellington's reply.
He just glances down and says, "By God, sir, so you have."
I cannot imagine that conversation today. It's just unbelievable.
His leg was amputated, and it was actually buried with its own headstone. It became a tourist attraction.
Only in the 19th century. So why does this all matter? Why are we still singing about it?
Because it really was a hinge point in history. It ended 23 years of constant warfare. After Waterloo, Europe enters a period of relative peace known as the Concert of Europe.
This sounds pleasant.
It basically meant the great powers agreed to work together. There wasn't another massive continent-wide conflict until World War I, almost a century later.
And that peace is what gave us the Pax Britannica.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It set the stage for the modern world. And of course, it gave us the phrase, "meeting your Waterloo," a final, absolute defeat.
Which brings us right back to the song.
Just like Napoleon couldn't fight the arithmetic of the coalition.
I also read that the battlefield itself was changed.
Yes, that giant lion's mound you see there today. It was built by the King of the Netherlands. But to build it, they scraped up tons of earth from Wellington's Ridge.
So the actual river slope isn't there anymore.
Not really. When Wellington visited years later, he was furious. He said, "They have altered my field of battle."
There is one last lyric I want to touch on. The history book on the shelf is always repeating itself. Looking at this deep dive, do you think that's true?
That's the big question, isn't it? We see these cycles of war and peace, the rise of a great power, a coalition forming to stop it. So in that sense, yes, the patterns repeat.
But not the details.
No, the specifics, the closing of a gate, a muddy field, a single command, those are the unique accidents that change the world.
And sometimes those accidents end up in a song by a Swedish pop group.
History is strange like that.
Well, I will never hear that song the same way again. I'll be thinking about the mud and the infantry squares.
And Lord Uxbridge's leg?
And the leg, of course. Thank you for taking us through the battlefield today.
My pleasure.
And to you listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive on the Speakeasy English channel. We'll leave you with this thought. ABBA thinks that history repeats itself, but Wellington called Waterloo the nearest run thing you ever saw. How different would the world look today if that gate at Hougoumont had been smashed open, or if it hadn't rained that morning?
History hangs by a thread.
Until next time, keep exploring.